Okay, this is an audio of the letter, in the form of an article I recently sent to the Creation Science movement and the Answers in Genesis groups, and hoping that all scientists will eventually, somehow get to hear or see it. This is an article written to inform and primarily edify all evolutionary and creation scientists and give a breakdown as to why their minds and conclusions never meet. Edification. The dictionary explanation is to instruct, especially as to encourage intellectual, moral, or spiritual improvement. So it applies to both schools of thought. Evolution theory science and young earth creation science has serious errors that keep them separated, and it is by design. The former has had injected into it the humanist and atheist mindset, whilst the latter has had their minds put into a box by the fundamentalist mindset of the Bible is 100% the true word of God, both arguing their respective viewpoints from misinterpretations of past events and from both positions of ignorance, belligerence, and yes, even arrogance. Both schools of thought are as likely as each other then to continue this, and as long as they continue on their individual paths, neither school will come to a true understanding. As this situation currently stands, Lucifer, yes, atheists, he is very real, is not only content but very happy with the state of affairs between the two. He alone is the maestro of atheism, humanism, and religious fundamentalism. Currently, one pottery vase is denying it had a maker, constantly changing its mind on just how ancient it is, whilst the second pottery vase is trying to defend the fact that it was indeed designed and made a short time ago, even though both vases look exactly the same. Scientists know full well the effects that distance can have on time in this galaxy, especially when regarding the distance from the original source of all solid matter. Scientists also acknowledge the existence of different dimensions, and that movement between one dimension and another is possible. It is, after all, the entire purpose of the CERN Hadron Collider. Yet I have never heard a scientist say, maybe matter came from another dimension. When material matter is looked at, it is but whirling particles of light, photons, neurons, and all the other ons. I'm not a scientist, so I don't know. That is because the source of all light is the I Am Creator, who is himself made up of what we call light, and probably a lot more beyond that. Hang in there, atheists. Solid matter, then, is made up of what? Light that has at some point in the past been brought to a halt and is now somewhat stationary. Not only that, but it originated from another dimension. Like an invisible thought of ours that has been made solid, tangible, and viewable, all because we used a pen or pencil that was designed and created to write down on a piece of paper or type it into a computer. Genesis chapter 1 verse 1 is merely a statement from the supreme I Am Creator that it was him that began everything. It is to be kept separate. In fact, it could have even been the title of the entire book. In the beginning, I Am created the heavens and the earth. It is not a verse that means he began everything 6,000 years ago. It is a statement of origin, and not to be used by creationists as they continue attempting to make things fit and misinterpretations and join it to the rest of the creation story. The evolutionary scientists' Big Bang was a creative thought of both intent and design from the I Am Creator, and took the form of an explosion of light. Perhaps this is why galaxies are circular, like a ripple in a pond, emanating from that creative thought's intended resting place in space. All sensible scientists know that solid matter is indeed very old, as time goes. In fact, the further away it is from the source of origin, the older it would seem. To young Earth creationists, fundamentalism has become the believers' largest obstacle to their understanding. Fundamentalism is in fact the assassin of truth. This goes for practically any school of thought or field of study. As it stands, both schools of thought are now completely driven by a form of faith in their own separate religions, and both willingly disregard further material evidences such as the Inca stones proving dinosaurs existed with man and they were pre-flood, or spiritual enlightenment, which is information from people communing with the Creator. Yahushua instructed that we must become as little children to come to truth. That means ridding ourselves of preconceived conclusions and pre-programmed mindsets. Arrogance, then, in loving one's own head knowledge, is the single largest enemy and obstacle of anyone seeking for the truth in anything. Both schools have concluded that they are already correct, and due to these solidified mindsets, never the twain shall meet. These debate clashes end up with a cacophony of thoughts that only leaves the listener confused and asking more questions. None of it results in people being brought closer to truth or the Creator, and it never will unless both schools can humble themselves. Sometimes the biggest challenge of all. People simply must lay down their ego. Sadly, too many people simply refuse to do that and quiet their minds, i.e. put their brains into neutral, long enough to have any new input. The only result of these belligerent debates is to encourage people towards either school of thought. Ultimately, the only real result is making Lucifer grin and marvel at man's foolishness as they waste what little time they have left. Building the full-sized ark is indeed a wonderful thing, but with Nibiru coming our direction in the very near future, was it really worth 100 million? The money could have been better spent. It should have been done 20 years ago. Fundamentalist Christians love their Bibles so much that they think anything outside of it is heresy. This mindset is their own stumbling block when it comes to the realization or spiritual enlightenment that the book they love so much has been so heavily manipulated, chopped and changed by their greatest adversary. It is all part of their own Bibles, the strong delusion from 2 Thessalonians that the Creator gave permission for in order to test them. They believe and love a lie. Lucifer was allowed to make changes in order to test the very people that profess to believe and follow the Messiah. Yet they refuse to become as little children, seek and knock at the Father's door for the truth, go in and sit at his feet. Why would they? They think they already have it written down in front of them. Evolution theory may as well be called science for the atheist or humanist, or science for the intellectual who doesn't want to be a Bible basher. In so doing, they rightfully acknowledge that believing 100% in that book is wrong, but in so doing, they miss out on the core truths and crucial messages within, that the Creator would not let Lucifer change. The fact that the Creator does exist, that he did send Yahushua down into a flesh body to die for them, to save their eternal spirits from an eternity of separation from him. Obviously, atheists or humanists simply hate that they might be answerable to anyone for their lives, but as long as they refuse to humble themselves, they will regret this manipulation of their free will for eternity once their flesh body expires. Both schools have become religious fanatics blinded by their own agendas and the belief and love of their head knowledge. The school of Yek, young Earth creationists, misinterpret their own book through the fervour and desires of their hearts and their minds. They think and feel they are fighting for right and truth, and in doing so make serious errors. They need to ask for forgiveness from the one they profess to serve and sit at the feet of the Creator alone, and not their Bibles. The verses of creation are a replenishing of the earth, for its remaking, for a second new start, after the first Luciferian rebellion utterly destroyed the first version, which was called Shan. The Bible's verses do not go into what occurred before that, because it has nothing to do with mankind, as they are part of the second earth. Mankind was not around during the first earth's existence. Genesis chapter 1 verse 2, and the earth was without form and void. The darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. So the earth was there, but messed up. It was without form, and it was void of life. Darkness, space, was in direct contact with the shattered remains of the planet. The deep was there, as was the face of the waters that God's Spirit moved upon. The planet was reformed and replenished with life, with a protective atmosphere, firmament, that separated it from darkness, or space, the abyss. Adam died before he reached 1,000 years old, and not in 24 hours, because the day, in that day you shall surely die, was from the Creator's perspective, of 1,000 years. A day for the Creator and 1,000 for Adam. The book of Jasher should absolutely be used by anyone attempting to explain the Noah's flood story with any accuracy and detail. This is one of the first tests versus the fundamentalist mindset. The refusal to do so is what brings creationists under constant fire and ridicule when trying to defend the account of Noah's flood and the ark. The adult animals brought their young to the ark, and after the young were on board, they were put into a deep sleep so they would not go into a panic when the waters came. The only food required then was for after the waters receded, and not during. When the waters came, the adult animals were used aggressively by the Creator to disperse the 700,000 people that had gathered around the ark trying to get on board. Jasher chapter 6, 17, 18 and verse 25. The ark was also built during a 120-year period. Noah also spent much of that time preaching repentance. The word canonized came from the Vatican. The evil priests of Dagon and satanic manipulators who oversaw the Council of Nicaea and the later writing of the KJV. So of course they also came up with the term heresy to keep the masses in line. It amazes me that Christians still want to take their standard for truth from murderers, people traffickers, rapers and cannibals. Lucifer has one of his thrones directly underneath the Vatican. Yes, the Genesis verses of creation are written using literal linguistics, but Yex miss that it is from the Creator's perspective, and not mankind's. Therefore, each day of creation was 1,000 years. Who's telling the story here? So we have an old universe when it comes to matter, 6 million years plus because Lucifer is 6 million years old, and a young remaking of the planet, previously called Shan, that was completely shattered during the Angelic War. The Earth's reforming happened around 12,000 years ago, but it was remade from old material. Mankind was made in the 6th millennium after it was reformed and replenished. Mankind was the last act of renewal. So both evolutionary scientists and creation scientists could actually get together in harmony if they both humbled themselves and just simply stopped the pointless non-achieving arguments. So an old planet and a young Earth are both true, all within an old universe. Unfortunately, public domain so-called educational science has become infiltrated by fifth columnists and taken over by humanists and atheists, therefore becoming secular. In the same way, creation scientists have become even more religious and tangled in a web of misinterpretation and deceit. And it was by design, Lucifer's design. Over the decades, neutral people that seek the truth rather than blindly following have taken time to stand back from the trees to see the forest, and cannot only see the wedge driven between all scientists, but sigh in exasperation of what has become two different schools of thought, mankind being separated through the classic divide and conquer methods. So yes, scientists, rocks are going to show data readings as very old, but stop manipulating the evidence to suit agendas. You're not doing anyone any favours by changing dates to suit theories. In fact, it is incredibly unscientific to do so. Facts are either final conclusive facts or they are not. Make your minds up. Simply, there is no need for separation when including the above information into the current mindsets. The wedge that has been driven between the schools can be dissolved and resolved for the betterment of mankind and the relationship between mankind and the Creator. My hope and prayer is for a brand new school of thought that brings all scientists together with all the above information taken into consideration. Yah bless. So